Hello everyone. So today we're going to be going over how to make a large closed peony, which is going to be built around a bulb. And this is the finished product without the calyx. We're going to be going over how to do the calyx and dusting the peony when we're finished. So I'm going to start with 5 cutters. These cutters are from several different sets, and everybody has their version of what a peony petal should look like. There's a lot of variations of peonies, a lot of species, so it's just, there's just a huge variety of cutters out there. So what I did here is I just decided this is how I want my peony to look, and I go from the smallest to the largest and I just compare. So this peony we're going to be doing 5. So we're going to start with 6 of these petals, 13 of these, 5 of the middle, 10 of the second to the large, and then 10 of the largest. And then I also have my veiner here. I'll put all the information as to where I get my supplies from. Also, alternatively, I'm going to show you how to vein with a veiner tool or a Dresden tool. If you have a Wilton tool set, this will be in it. These are very easy to get a hold of. Some look like this, some look like a little different. It just depends on the brand. And then I'm going to start with a styrofoam bulb, which is 1.5 inches in circumference. And then just an 18 gauge wire, which is very, very sturdy. You're going to need a sturdy wire for this flower. And then I just inserted a hole, took some hot glue, my glue gun, stuck it in there, and voila, you've got your little bulb. Okay. We're also going to be using drying cups, resting cups, to get a really nice rounded shape for some of your petals, which really does help. I have a larger one here too for the larger petals. Something like this works perfectly fine. And then for the largest petal, I have here an apple former. You can find these at the grocery store. This is what they get the apples and the oranges shipments in. So just cardboard, but very, very handy. All right, so let's get started. I have already my petals here, and they're already smoothed out. What I do is I just cut them out, and I just focus my finger on the very edge, so the very edge of your petal, and that really kind of helps accelerate the thinning process of thinning out your edges and softening them. All right, so I'm still going to soften them a little bit on my pad here. I'm going to take all 6 out. So if you don't have a peony veiner, like I said, you can always use this tool here, and I'm going to use the flat side just to kind of ruffle the edges. Trying to make sure that you don't press too hard because you could tear your gum paste. I'm trying really hard not to tear it. This here, I'm being very gentle with this side here. Very, very gentle. But it kind of gives it a nice little flare there. So that is an alternative. I like to actually use both. So I'm going to show you how I would do that. And then I might want to just add just a little bit of curl to my petals. And then you'll need a little cup with water and a brush, or I have this handy dandy water brush here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slather on Crisco onto my bulb. And then I'm going to place my first petal onto the bulb, but I really want to make sure that the top of this petal is at the top of this bulb. And then I'm just going to overlap the second petal and then overlap the third, but I'm going to tuck in the second petal underneath the first. And then I'm just going to pinch the excess off here. So I just want it to have almost like a pinwheel look to it. I don't want to smush it down. I want to keep that texture of those petals. And notice I'm just wetting from the bottom to mid petal. So when I place the first one of the second set, I'm going to cover the seam here. And I want to place it a little bit above the top. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but it's clearly rising above the first set. And then I'm going to put the second petal on, and then the third. So these aren't overlapping very well, and it's just because I chose a smaller cutter and I have a large bulb. Honestly, at this point, you're just going to see the top. You're really not going to see the sides once we start building it, and no one's going to notice. But I still want to make sure that it is forming a pinwheel type of look. So we're moving on to the next cutter, and I'm going to first do 3 and then move on to 10 more petals of these. And then I want to start putting them in their cups to kind of set and give a really nice curved effect. And that'll add to the look of the petal, and it'll start to make it almost look like it's starting to really open from a large bulb into a large flower blossom. Right in here. And while these are setting, you can also be working on the next set of petals, because I leave these in here for about maybe 8 to 10 minutes. I wouldn't leave them out. I wouldn't leave them in there until they're completely dry. You don't want that. You want them to be really pliable. If they are too dry, they'll start to crack, and they just will not work for you very well. And then I'm going to go and do the next cutter up, which is 5 petals. So by the time I place these other 10, these should be really nice and set and curved the way I want them to be. So I'm going to start adding these petals on. And as you can see, they're very nicely curved. I could keep them a little bit longer, but just for video purposes, I'm gonna start moving on. And I'm just going to place this over a seam, and I want it to be above the previous set. So it's actually just above, as you can see, this second set here. Trying to just keep each of them consistent in height. So this is when you know it's time to move on either to a larger cutter, and then you would do 3, or you could do the same cutter and just do more petals. When they're not overlapping very well, like right here you've got a huge seam. Here they're just not overlapping all that well either. And this would go for a ranunculus, a rose, anything that has petals that are building on a ball or a form. So if you were to say have a larger cutter, but 3, because it is larger, it would cover each other because it's obviously a larger bulb, okay? But at this point, I'm just going to add more petals, and then I'll get more coverage. So because it is 5 and they're not going to completely cover each seam as if I were to put just 3, I'm going to just stagger it a bit. And I want it to be a little bit over the first, or I'm sorry, the previous row. And then I'm going to tuck this one in. And then one will eventually completely cover a seam. There we have it. And I'm just focusing on the base here to get it adhered to the bulb and to the other petals. This is exactly the look I'm going for. It's really airy. There's space in between there. So the look is coming up so that you have the base of the bulb really down in there, and then it's coming up, and then it's going to start to fall down. So this is the final 5 of the second cutter. And because it's 5, it will cover each seam very nicely. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to place this petal at the same height as the previous layer. I don't want to go any farther up. And I'm just going to tuck them in to each other. And right now, to me, it looks a little bit like a tulip, but it's not going to end up being that way. So now we have just the 5 of this petal here. And then I want to take this petal and I'm going to cover each seam, but I want to put it farther down a little bit. So just a little tiny bit. So if you can see the previous petal and then this new petal, it's a little bit farther down. Now we're going to move on to the larger petals. Now we're to the final 10 petals at the largest cutter, and I want 5 of them to be a little bit more curved. So I'm going to use this, these cups instead of just using this here. I'm going to have 5 here and 5 here. And this is all based on the type of look that you want. I'd like to let the last 5 petals to be a little bit more open and farther down on the blossom. So as you can see, when I put them into this cup, they really, really curve very well. They curve and they ruffle just because it's such a small cup and a large petal. But that's the type of look that I'm looking for this set. So this cutter should be about where I want it to be. They're curving really, really well. I'm just going to apply those. So then I'm just going to place this over the seam and place it farther down. So below the last set. And if I feel like maybe they're not lining up the way I want them to, I can just turn it over and just move them and adjust them. And then also, if you find that they're wanting to flop on you, if you're putting them on and you're holding the flower up, just hold it upside down and attach the flowers that way. It makes it a lot easier. And you can also tell a lot easier if they're relatively even. If you have the same amount of space between them, if you have it upside down. Okay, there we have it. Also, if I'm finding that they're wanting to flop, I'm going to hold it, I'm actually going to hang it upside down on a hook or something and let them set, and that really makes it easier too. So let's attach the last 5 of this petal. So I'm just going to attach these upside down, and I'm going to just place them a little bit below the last set. I'm just going to tuck underneath each one. So I'm going to hang that upside down, and I'm going to wait about maybe 8 minutes or so just to let the largest petals set. So here we have the first 5 of the final petal, and they really look nice. They're nice and cupped. So because this is such a large petal, and where I want to place it, it's going to be a little bit, just a tad bit below, but not very much. It's going to actually run into the wire, so and I'll have a lot of excess to take off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this excess off. And I'm also going to do that with the next set. So then we're almost finished, and this is turning out really beautiful. So if we do just a comparison, very similar. So the last petals should be pretty much set, and they're very, they're not wanting to flap around or anything like that. They're holding their shape. So then these are going to be a little bit farther down. And I'm just going to repeat the process. have it. And I'm just going to hang it upside down a bit, just for a little while. But then after a while, what I'm going to do is put it into a cup. So I'm going to hang it upside down for a little bit, but after a while I'm going to insert this flower into this cup. And this is just from the apple former. I just cut it out and placed a hole in the bottom of it. And then this is going to just rest, and this makes it really easy to adjust your petals and open them a bit, for this flower to really just expand. As you can see, you can also buy formers. Wilton has a bunch of them. They have like different sizes and stuff. This is really nice. And then what I do is I have a shoe rack. I think I got this at Target. And then I just place it right here, and it dries very nicely. So next up, we are going to go over making the calyx and dusting our peony. Alright, so we're going to go over how to make a calyx for your peony and to how to dust your peony. So the calyx for the peony is a lot different than just a regular calyx that you would find on a rose. It has like 3 little rose petal looking things, and then it has 3 leaf looking things. So basically, if I cut it out like this, and then I cut these out, this is what it's going to look like. Now, if you don't have a cutter, like a leaf cutter like this, you can always use a little wheel cutter and just kind of cut something out like that. That's fine. It's going to be underneath the flower anyway, so no one's really going to see exactly like how it's shaped or anything like that. So I'm just going to thin these out a bit. Obviously, the smaller the peony, the smaller the cutters. So if you look on the small peony video, I've used smaller size cutters. So I'm just going to soften my edges. And just using a random type of leaf veiner. You can also use a rose leaf veiner if you'd like to. Alternatively, you can use this little shell looking tool, and just to kind of give it a little bit of texture. I'm just going to put this one in here too. And then I'm just going to ball these up a little bit. They kind of almost remind me a little bit of cabbage leaves. Just like a little cabbage, or yeah, just like little tiny cabbage leaves. And I'm going to wet this all the way just underneath the edge. Just flaring these up a bit. All right, so we have the first part on, and then I'm going to work on the second part. So I'm going to dust the calyx, and I'm basically using a cut kiwi and a dark green. So basically like a lime color and a forest green. And then I'm going to add a little bit of red to it as well, because a lot of times with roses and with rose leaves and peony leaves, their leaves have a little bit of red in them. And if I have excess, I'm just going to dab on my palette here. And I'm just taking several different shades and just blending them in along with other shades of green. Then I'm going to take my pink brush and just add a little bit of green, or I'm sorry, red. The point of it is a lot of blending to get a really natural look. So I want to get a darker color in the center, and what I'm doing is I'm just flicking my brush on the edges of the petals, because they're really hard to get down in there otherwise. If you want to go farther down, you might end up maybe breaking some petals or something like that. So I'm just focusing this color on the edge, and I'm just blending, and I'm using a poppy red, which is kind of a dark watermelon color, and then a little bit of a regular watermelon, which is just a very light pink. So now if you want something a little bit darker than this, say you want a darker pink, then what you would do is you would just mix a darker color of gum paste And then just use whatever petal dust would go well with that. Because petal dust is really just meant to enhance the color, not necessarily to cover the whole entire thing. Okay, so this is already, like I said, this has previously been dusted. Just have fun with this flower. Experiment with sizes and cutters and just different techniques and colors. So, so thank you for watching.